Hello there. This is Bryce, and this is Bryce Can Read. As you can see, we are back in the dungeon once again for crimes against YouTube humanity. So I guess all we have to do is read. So today we'll be reading some Grimm's fairy tales. We'll just skip to some that look pretty cool. And I did do a little looking ahead this time, and I see there's a fairy tale called The Dog. Dog's in number sleeves. And the Sparrow. So I think we'll check out The Dog and the Sparrow first. Alright, The Dog and the Sparrow. There was once a sheepdog whose master behaved ill to him and did not give him enough to eat, and when for hunger he could bear it no longer, he left his service very sadly. In the street he was met by a sparrow who said, "Dog, my brother, why are you so sad?" And the dog answered, "I am hungry and have nothing to eat." Then said the sparrow, "Dear brother, come with me into the town. I will give you plenty." Then they went together into the town, and soon they came to a butcher's stall, and the sparrow said to the dog, "Stay here while I reach you down a piece of meat." And he perched on the stall, looked around to see that no one noticed him, and packed, pulled, and dragged so long at a piece that lay near the edge of the board that at last it slid to the ground. The dog picked it up, ran with it into a corner, and ate it up. Then said the sparrow, "Now come with me into another stall, and I will get you another piece, so that your hunger may be satisfied." When the dog had devoured a second piece, the sparrow asked, "Dog, my brother, are you satisfied now?" "Yes, as to meat I am," answered he, "but I have had no bread." Then said the sparrow, "That also shall you have, come with me." And he led him to a baker's stall and pecked at a few little rolls until they fell to the ground. And as the dog still wanted more, they went to another stall farther on and got more bread. When that was done, the sparrow said, "Dog, my brother, are you satisfied yet?" "Yes," answered he, "and now we will walk a little outside the town." And they went together along the high road. It was warm weather, and when they had gone a little way, the dog said, "I am tired, and would like to go to sleep." "Well, do so," said the sparrow. "In the meanwhile, I will sit near on a bough." The dog laid himself in the road, and fell fast asleep. And as he lay there, a wagoner came, and with a wagon and 3 horses, laden with 2 casks of wine. The sparrow, seeing that he was not going to turn aside, but kept in the beaten track just where the dog lay, cried out, "Wagoner, take care, or you shall suffer for it." But the wagoner, muttering, "What harm can you do to me?" cracked his whip and drove his wagon over the dog, and he was crushed to death by the wheels. Then the sparrow cried, "You have killed the dog, my brother, and it shall cost you your horses and cart." "Oh, horses and carts," said the wagoner, "what harm can you do me, I should like to know," and drove on. The sparrow crept under the coverings of the wagon and pecked at the bunghole of one of the casks until a cork came out, and all the wine ran out without the wagoner noticing. After a while, looking round, he saw that something dripped from the wagon, and on examining the casks, he found out that one of them was empty, and he cried out, "I am a ruined man." "Not ruined enough yet," said the sparrow, and flying to one of the horses, he perched on his head and pecked at his eyes. When the wagoner saw that, he took out his axe to hit the sparrow, who at that moment flew aloft, and the wagoner, missing him, struck the horse on the head, so that he fell down dead. "Oh, I am a ruined man," cried he. "Not ruined enough yet," said the sparrow, and as the wagoner drove on with the two horses that were left, the sparrow crept again under the wagon covering and pecked the cork out of the second cask, so that all the wine leaked out. When the wagoner became aware of it, he cried out again, "Oh, I am a ruined man." But the sparrow answered, "Not ruined enough yet," and perched on the second horse's head and began pecking at his eyes. Back ran the wagoner and raised his axe to strike, but the sparrow flying aloft, the stroke fell on the horse so that he was killed. "Oh, I am a ruined man," cried the wagoner. "Not ruined enough yet," said the sparrow, and perching on the third horse began pecking at his eyes. The wagoner struck out in his anger at the sparrow without taking aim, and missing him, he laid his third horse dead. "Oh, I am a ruined man," he cried. "Not ruined enough yet," answered the sparrow, flying off. "I will see to that at home." So the wagoner had to leave his wagon standing, and went home full of rage. "Oh," he said to his wife, "what ill luck I have had. The wine is spilt, and the horses are all dead, 3. "Oh, husband," answered she, "such a terrible bird has come to this house. He has brought with him all the birds of the air, and there they are in the midst of our wheat, devouring it." And he looked, and there were thousands upon thousands of birds sitting on the ground, having eaten up all the wheat, and the sparrow in the midst. And the wagoner cried, "Oh, I am a ruined man." "Not ruined enough yet," answered the sparrow. "Wagoner, it shall cost you your life," and he flew away. Now the wagoner, having lost everything he possessed, went indoors and sat down, angry and miserable, behind the stove. The sparrow was perched outside on the windowsill and cried, "Wagoner, it shall cost you your life." Then the wagoner seized his axe and threw it at the sparrow, but it broke the window sash in two and did not touch the sparrow, who now hopped inside, perched on the stove, and cried, "Wagoner, it shall cost you your life." And he, mad and blind with rage, beat in the stove, and as the sparrow flew from one spot to another, hacked everything in pieces, furniture, looking-glass, benches, table, and the very walls of his house, and yet did not touch the sparrow. At last he caught and held him in his hand. "Now," said his wife, "shall I not kill him?" "No," cried he, "that were too easy a death. I will swallow him." And as the bird was fluttering in the man's mouth, it stretched out its head, saying, "Wagoner, it shall cost you your life." Then the wagoner reached the axe to his wife, saying, "Wife, strike me this bird dead." The wife struck, but missed her aim, and the blow fell on the wagoner's head and dropped him down dead. But the sparrow flew over the hills and away. What a pesky little sparrow. It really should teach you not to mess with dogs. Let's skip Mr. Corpse. Sounds lame. The Vagabonds. Let's read this one. The cock said to the hen, "It is nutting time. let us go together to the mountains and have a good feast for once, before the squirrels come and carry all away. Yes, answered the hen. Come along, we will have a jolly time together. Then they set off together to the mountains, and as if it was a fine day, they stayed there till the evening. Now whether it was that they had eaten so much, or because of their pride and haughtiness, I do not know, but they would not go home on foot. So the cock set to work to make a little carriage out of nutshells. When it was ready, the hen seated herself in it, and said to the cock, Now you can harness yourself to it. That's all very fine, said the cock. I would sooner go home on foot than do such a thing, and I never agreed to it. I don't mind being coachman and sitting on the box, but as to drawing it myself, it's quite out of the question. They were wrangling. A duck came quacking. You thieving vagabonds, who told you might go to my mountain? Look out, or it will be worse for you. And she flew at the cock with the bill wide open. But the cock was not backward, and he gave the duck a good dig in the body, and hacked at her with his spurs so valiantly that she begged for mercy, and willingly allowed herself to be harnessed to the carriage. Then the cock seated himself on the box and was coachman. So off they went at a great pace. The cock cried out, Run, duck, as fast as you can. When they had gone a part of the way, they met 2 foot passengers, a pin and a needle. They cried, Stop, stop, and said it would soon be blindsman's holiday. They could not go a step farther, that the ways were very muddy. Might they just get in for a little? They had been standing at the door of the tailor's house of call and had not been delayed because of beer. The cock, seeing they were slender folks, that they would not take up a great deal of room, let them both step in, only they must promise not to tread on his toes nor on the hens. Late in the evening they came to an inn, and there they found that they could not go any farther that night, as the duck's paces were not good. She waddled so much from side to side, so they turned in. The landlord at first made some difficulty. His house was already full, and he thought they had no very distinguished appearance. At last, however, when they had made many fine speeches, and had promised him the egg that the hen had laid on the way, and that he should keep the duck, who laid one every day, he agreed to let them stay the night, and so they had a very gay time. Early in the morning, when it was beginning to grow light, and everybody was still asleep, the cock waked up the hen, fetched the egg, and made a hole in it, and they ate it up between them, and put the eggshell on the heath. Then they went up to the needle, who was still sleeping, picked him up by his head, and stuck him in the landlord's chair cushion, and having also placed a pin in his towel, off they flew over the hills and far away. The duck, who had chosen to sleep in the open air, and had remained in the yard, heard the rustling of their wings, and waking up, looked about until she found a brook, down which she swam a good deal faster than she had drawn the carriage. A few hours later the landlord woke, and, leaving his feather bed, began washing himself. When he took the towel to dry himself, he drew the pin all across his face, and made a red streak from ear to ear. Then he went into the kitchen to light his pipe, but when he stopped towards the heath to take up a coal, an eggshell flew in his eyes. Everything goes wrong this morning, said he, and he let himself drop, full of vexation, into his grandfather's chair. But he jumped up in a moment, crying out, Dear, for the needle had gone into him. Now he became angry, and had his suspicions of the guests who had arrived so late in the evening before, and when he looked round for them, they were nowhere to be seen. Then he swore that he would never more harbor such vagabonds that consumed so much, paid nothing, and played such nasty tricks into the bargain. The death of the hen. Once on a time the cock and the hen went to the nut mountains, and they agreed beforehand that whichever of them should find a nut was to divide it with the other. Now the hen found a great big nut, but said nothing about it, and was going to eat it all alone. But the kernel was such a fat one that she could not swallow it down, and it stuck in her throat, so that she was afraid she should choke. "Cock," she cried, "run as fast as you can and fetch me some water, or I shall choke." So the cock ran as fast as he could to the brook and said, "Brook, give me some water." The hen is up yonder choking with a big nut stuck in her throat. But the brook answered, "First run to the bride and ask her for some red silk." So the cock ran to the bride and said, "Bride, give me some red silk." The brook wants me to give him some red silk. I want him to give me some water, for the hen lies yonder choking with the big nut stuck in her throat. But the bride answered, "First go and fetch me my garland that hangs on a willow." And the cock ran to the willow and pulled the garland from the bow, and brought it to the bride, and the bride gave him red silk, and he brought it to the brook, and the brook gave him water. So then the cock brought the water to the hen, but alas, it was too late. The hen had choked in the meanwhile, and lay there dead. And the cock was so grieved that he cried aloud, and all the beasts came and lamented for the hen. And 6 mice built a little wagon on which to carry the poor hen to her grave. And when it was ready, they harnessed themselves to it, and the cock drove. On the way they met the fox. "Hello, cock," said he. "Where are you off to?" "To bury my hen," answered the cock. "Can I come too?" said the fox. "Yes, if you follow behind," said the cock. So the fox followed behind, and he was soon joined by the wolf, the bear, the stag, the lion, and all the beasts in the wood. And the procession went on till they came to a brook. "How shall we get over?" said the cock. Now in the brook there was a straw, and he said, "I will lay myself across, so that you may pass over on me." But when the 6 mice had gone upon the bridge, the straw slipped and fell into the water, and they all tumbled in and were drowned. So they were as badly off as ever, when a coal came up, and said he would lay himself across, and they might pass over him. But no sooner had he touched the water than he hissed, went out, and was dead. A stone, seeing this, was touched with pity, and, wishing to help the cock, he laid himself across the stream. And the cock drew the wagon with the dead hen and it safely to the other side, and then began to draw the others who followed him beyond across too. But it was too much for him. The wagon turned over, and all tumbled into the water on top of one another, and were drowned. So the cock was left all alone with the dead hen, and he dug a grave and laid her in it, and he raised a mound above her, and set himself down, and lamented so sore that at last he died, and so they were all dead together. My God, who writes these things? The Owl. 200 or 300 years ago, when people were far from being so crafty and cunning that they are nowadays, an extraordinary event took place in a little town. By some mischance, one of the great owls, called horn owls, had come from the neighboring woods into the barn of one of the townsfolk in the night time, and when day broke did not dare to venture forth again from her retreat, for fear of the other birds, which raised a terrible outcry whenever she appeared. In the morning, when the manservant went into the barn to fetch some straw, he was so mightily alarmed at the sight of the owl sitting there in a corner that he ran away and announced to his master that a monster, the like of which he had never set eyes on in his life, and which could devour a man without the slightest difficulty, was sitting in the barn, rolling its eyes out above its head. "I know you already," said the master. "You have courage enough to chase the blackbird about the fields, but when you see a dead hen here lying, you have to get a stick before you go near it. I must go and see for myself what kind of monster it is," added the master, and went quite boldly into the granary and looked round him. When, however, he saw the strange grim creature with his own eyes, he was no less terrified than the servant had been. With 2 bounds he sprang out, ran to his neighbors, and begged them imploringly to lend him assistance against an unknown and dangerous beast, or else the whole town might be in danger if he were to break loose out of the barn where it was shut up. A great noise and clamor arose in all the streets. The townsmen came armed with spears, 8-forked scythes, and axes, as if they were going out against an enemy. Finally, the senators appeared with the burgomaster at their head. When they had drawn up in the marketplace, they marched to the barn and surrounded it on all sides. Thereupon, one of the most courageous of them stepped forth and entered with his spear lowered, but came running out immediately afterwards with a shriek, and as pale as death, and could not utter a single word. Yet 2 others ventured in, but they fared no better. At last one stepped forth, a great strong man who was famous for his warlike deeds, and said, "You will not drive away the monster by merely looking at him. We must be in earnest here, but I see that you have all turned into women, and not one of you dares to encounter the animal." He ordered them to give him some armor, had a sword and spear brought, and armed himself. All praised his courage, though many feared for his life. The 2 barn doors were opened, and they saw the owl, which in the meantime had perched herself on the middle of a great cross beam. He had a ladder brought, and when he raised it, bare himself bravely, and condemned him to St. George, who slew the dragon. When he had just got to the top, the owl perceived that he had designs on her, and was also bewildered by the crowd and the shouting, and knew not how to escape. She rolled her eyes, ruffled her feathers, flapped her wings, snapped her beak, and cried, "To-wit, to-woo," and the valiant hero. "Anyone who was standing where I am standing," answered he, "would not cry strike home." He certainly did plant his one foot wrong high on the ladder, but then he began to tremble, and half fainting went back again. And now there was no one left who dared to put himself in such danger. The monster, said they, had poisoned and mortally wounded the very strongest man among us by snapping at him and just breathing on him. Are we too had to risk our lives? They took counsel as to what they ought to do to prevent the whole town being destroyed. For a long time everything seemed to be of no use, but at length the burgomaster found an expedient. "My opinion," said he, "is that we ought, out of the common purse, to pay for this barn and whatever corn, straw, or hay contains, and thus indemnify the owner, and then burn down the whole building, and the terrible beast with it. Thus no one will have to endanger his life. This is no time for thinking of expense, and, stinginess would be ill applied." All agreed with him, so they set fire to the barn at all 4 corners, and with the owl in it was miserably burnt. Let anyone who will not believe it go thither and inquire for himself. Sorry about that little omission there. Kind of an outdated word that, you probably shouldn't say anymore, especially on the internet. This one is the wonderful musician. A wonderful musician was walking through a forest, thinking of nothing in particular. When he had nothing more left to think about, he said to himself, "I shall grow tired of being in this wood, so I will bring out a good companion." He took the fiddle that hung on his back and fiddled so that the wood echoed. Before long, a wolf came through the thicket and trotted up to him. "Oh, here comes a wolf. I had no particular wish for such company," said the musician. But the wolf drew nearer and said to him, "Oh, you musician, how finely you play. I must learn how to play too." "That is easily done," answered the musician. "You have only to do exactly as I tell you." "Oh, musician," said the wolf, "I will obey you as a scholar does his master." The musician told him to come with him. As they went a part of the way together, they came to an old oak tree, which was hollow within and cleft through the middle. "Look here," said the musician, "if you want to learn how to fiddle, you must put your 4 feet in this cleft." The wolf obeyed, but the musician took up a stone and quickly wedged both his paws with one stroke, so fast that the wolf was a prisoner, and there obliged to stop. "Stay there until I come back again," said the musician, and went his way. After a while he said again to himself, "I shall grow weary here in this wood. I will bring out another companion," and he took his fiddle and fiddled away in the wood. Before long a fox came slinking through the trees. "Oh, here comes a fox," said the musician. I had no particular wish for such company. The fox came up to him and said, "Oh, my dear musician, how finely you play. I must learn how to play too." "That is easily done," said the musician. "You have only to do exactly as I tell you." "Oh, musician," answered the fox, "I will obey you as a scholar to his master." "Follow me," said the musician, and as they went a part of the way together, they came to a footpath with a high hedge on each side. Then the musician stopped, and taking hold of his hazel branch, bent it down to the earth, and put his foot on the end of it. Then he bent down a branch from the other side and said, "Come on, little fox. If you wish to learn something, reach me your left foot." The fox obeyed, and the musician found the foot to the left-hand branch. "Now, little fox," said he, "reach me the right one." Then he bound to it the right-hand branch, and when he had seen that the knots were fast enough, he let go, and the branches flew back and caught up the fox, shaking and struggling in the air. "Wait there until I come back again," said the musician, and went his way. By and by he said to himself, "I shall grow weary in this wood. I will bring out another companion." So he took his fiddle, and sound echoed throughout the wood. Then a hare sprang out before him. "Oh, here comes a hare," said he. "That's not what I want." "Ah, my dear musician," said the hare, "how finely you play. I should like to learn how to play too." "That is soon done," said the musician. "Only you must do whatever I tell you." "Oh, musician," answered the hare, "I will obey you as a scholar his master." So they went a part of the way together, until they came to a clear place in the wood where there stood an aspen tree. The musician tied a long string around the neck of the hare, and knotted the other end of it to the tree. "Now then, courage, little hare. Run 20 times around the tree," cried the musician, and the hare obeyed. As he ran round the 20th time, the string had wound 20 times round the tree trunk, and the hare was imprisoned, and pull and tug as he would, he only cut his tender neck with the string. "Wait there until I come back again," said the musician, and walked on. The wolf, meanwhile, had struggled and pulled and bitten at the stone, and worked away so long, that at last he made his paws free, and got himself out of the cleft. Full of anger and fury, he hastened after the musician to tear him to pieces. When the fox saw him run by, he began groaning and cried out with all his might, "Brother Wolf, come and help me. The musician has betrayed me." The wolf then pulled the branches down, bit the knots in two, and set the fox free, and he went with him to take vengeance on the musician. They found the imprisoned hare, and set him likewise free, and then they all went on together to seek their enemy. The musician had once more played his fiddle, and this time he had been more fortunate. The sound had reached the ears of a poor woodcutter, who immediately, and in spite of himself, left his work, and with his axe under his arm came to listen to the music. "At last here comes the right sort of companion," said the musician. "It was a man I wanted, and not wild animals." And then he began to go so sweetly that the poor man stood as if enchanted, and his heart was filled with joy. And as he was standing there came the wolf, the fox, and the hare, and he could easily see that they meant mischief. Then he raised his shining axe and stood in front of the musician as if to say, "Whoever means harm to him had better take care of himself, for you will have to deal with me." Then the animals were frightened and ran back into the wood, and the musician, when he had played once more to the man to show his gratitude, went on his way. Gosh, whispering for so long is actually kind of difficult. It hurts my throat after a while. I wonder how these other channels on YouTube can do it for so long. I feel like I run out of breath doing this. Here, I'm going to start speaking in my normal voice. Just for a few stories, I think, just to recover from my whispering breathlessness. The mouse, the bird, and the sausage. Alright. Once on a time,
A mouse and a bird and a sausage lived and kept house together in perfect peace among themselves, and in great prosperity. It was the bird's business to fly to the forest every day and bring back wood. The mouse had to draw the water, make the fire, and set the table, and the sausage had to do the cooking. Nobody is content in this world, much will have more. One day the bird met another bird on the way, and told him of his excellent condition in life. But the other bird called him a poor simpleton to do so much work, while the two others led easy lives at home. When the mouse had made up her fire and drawn water, she went to rest in her little room until it was time to lay the cloth. The sausage stayed by the saucepans, looked to it that the victuals were well cooked, and just before dinner he stirred the broth or the stew 3 or 4 times well round himself, so as to enrich and season and flavor it. Then the bird used to come home and lay down his load, and they sat down to table, and after a good meal they would go to bed and sleep their fill till the next morning. It really was a most satisfactory life. But the bird came to the resolution next day never again to fetch wood. He had, he said, been their slave long enough. Now they must change about and make a new arrangement. So in spite of all the mouse and the sausage could say, the bird was determined to have his own way. So they drew lots to settle it, and it fell so that the sausage was to fetch wood, the mouse was to cook, and the bird was to draw water. Now see what happened. The sausage went away after wood, the bird made up the fire, and the mouse put on the pot, and they waited until the sausage should come home, bringing the wood for the next day. But the sausage was absent so long, and they thought something must have happened to him, and the bird went part of the way to see if he could see anything of him. Not far off he had met with a dog on the road, who, looking upon the sausage as a lawful prey, had picked him up and made an end of him. The bird then lodged a complaint against the dog never sleeps, as an open and flagrant robber, but it was all no good, as the dog declared that he had found forged letters upon the sausage, so that he deserved to lose his life. The bird then very sadly took up the wood and carried it home himself, and related to the mouse all he had seen and heard. They were both very troubled, but determined to look on the bright side of things, and still to remain together. And so the bird laid the cloth, and the mouse prepared the food, and finally got into the pot, as the sausage used to do, to stir and flavor the broth. Then she had to part with fur and skin, and lastly, with life. And when the bird came to dish up the dinner, there was no cook to be seen, and he turned over the heap of wood, and looked, but the cook never appeared again. By accident the wood caught fire, and the bird hastened to fetch water to put it out, but he let fall the bucket in the well, and himself after it, and he could not get out again. He was obliged to be drowned. The crumbs on the table. A countryman one day said to his little puppies, "Come into the parlor and enjoy yourselves, and pick up the breadcrumbs on the table. Your mistress has gone out to pay some visits." Then the little dogs said, No, we will not go. If the mistress gets to know it, she will beat us." The countryman said, "She will know nothing about it. Do come, after all, she never gives you anything good." Then the little dogs again said, Nay, we must let it alone, we must not go." But the countryman let them have no peace until at last they went and got on the table, and ate up the breadcrumbs with all their might. But at that very moment the mistress came and seized a stick in great haste, and beat them and treated them very badly. And when they were outside the house, the little dog said to the countryman, Do you see what happened?" And the countryman laughed and said, Didn't you expect it?" So they had just to run away. The cat and mouse in partnership. A cat, having made acquaintance with the mouse, pretended such great love for her that the mouse agreed that they should live and keep house together. "We must make provision for the winter," said the cat, "or we shall suffer hunger, and you, little mouse, must not stir out, or you will be caught in a trap." So they took counsel together and bought a little pot of fat, and then they could not tell where to put it for safety. But after long consideration, the cat said there could be not a better place than the church, for nobody would steal there, and they would put it under the altar and not touch it until they were really in want. So this was done, and the little pot placed in safety. But before long the cat was seized with great wish to taste it. "Listen to me, little mouse," said he. "I have been asked by my cousin to stand godfather to a little son she has brought into the world. He is white with brown spots, and they have to do the christening today. So let me go to it, and you stay at home and keep house." "Oh, yes, certainly," answered the mouse. "Pray go by all means, and when you are feasting on all the good things, think of me. I should like so a drop of the sweet red wine." But there was not a word of truth in all this. The cat had no cousin, and had not been asked to stand godfather. He went to the church, straight up to the little pot, and licked the fat off the top. Then he took a walk over the roofs of the town, saw his acquaintances, stretched himself in the sun, and licked his whiskers as often as he thought of the little pot of fat. And then when it was evening he went home. "Here you are at last," said the mouse. "I expect you have a merry time." "Oh, pretty well," answered the cat. "And what name did you give the child?" asked the mouse. "Top off," answered the cat, dryly. "Top off," cried the mouse. "That is a singular and wonderful name. Is it common in your family?" "What does it matter?" asked the cat. "It's not any worse than Crumb Picker, like your godchild." A little time after this the cat was again seized with a longing. "Again I must ask you," he said to the mouse, "to do me a favor and keep house alone for a day. I have been asked a second time to stand godfather, and as the little one has a white ring around his neck, I cannot well refuse." So the kind little mouse consented, and the cat crept along by the town wall until he reached the church, and going straight to the little pot of fat, devoured half of it. "Nothing tastes so well as what one keeps to oneself," said he, feeling quite content with his day's work. When he reached home, the mouse asked what name had been given to the child. "Half gone," answered the cat. "Half gone," cried the mouse. "I never heard of such a name in my life. I'll bet it's not to be found in the calendar." Soon after that the cat's mouth began to water again, rather fat. "Good things always come in threes," he said to the mouse. "Again I have been asked to stand godfather. The little one is quite black with white feet, and not any white hair on his body. Such a thing does not happen every day, so you will let me go, won't you?" "Top half, half gone," murmured the mouse. "They are such curious names I cannot but wonder at them." "That's because you are always sitting at home," said the cat, "in your little gray frock and hairy tail, never seeing the world, and fancying all sort of things." So the little mouse cleaned up house and set it all in order. Meanwhile the greedy cat went and made an end of the little pot of fat. "Now all finished, one's mind will be easy," said he, and came home in the evening quite sleek and comfortable. The mouse asked at once what name had been given to the third child. "It won't please you any better than the others," answered the cat. "It's called All Gone." "All Gone!" cried the mouse. "What an unheard of name! I never met anything like it. All gone! Whatever can it mean?" And shaking her head, she curled herself round and went to sleep. After that the cat was not again asked to stand godfather. When the winter had come, and there was nothing more to be had out of doors, the mouse began to think of their store. "Come, cat," said she, "we will fetch our pot of fat. How good it will taste, to be sure." "Of course it will," said the cat. "Just as good as if you stuck your tongue out the window." So they set out, and when they reached the place they found the pot, but it was standing empty. "Oh, now I know what it all meant," cried the mouse. "Now I see what sort of partner you have been. Instead of standing godfather, you have devoured it all. First top off, then half gone, then—" "Will you hold your tongue?" screamed the cat. "Another word, and I will devour you too." And the poor little mouse, having all gone on her tongue, out it came, and the cat leaped upon her and made an end of her. And that is the way of the world. The Wolf and the 7 Little Kids. Wolves are kind of like dogs. There was once on a time an old goat who had 7 little kids and loved them all with all the love of a mother for her children. One day she wanted to go into the forest and fetch some food, so she called all 7 to her and said, "Dear children, I have to go into the forest. Be on your guard against the wolf. If he comes in, he will devour you all, skin, hair, and all. The wretch often disguises himself, but you will know him at once by his rough voice and his black feet." The kids said, "Dear mother, we will take good care of ourselves. You may go away without any anxiety." Then the old one bleated and went on her way with an easy mind. It was not long before someone knocked at the house door and cried, "Open the door, dear children, your mother is here, and he has brought something back with her for each of you." But the little kids knew that it was the wolf by the rough voice. "We will not open the door," cried they. "You are not our mother. She has a soft, pleasant voice, but your voice is rough. You are the wolf." The wolf went away to a shopkeeper and bought himself a great lump of chalk, ate this, and made his voice soft with it. Then he came back, knocked at the door of the house, and cried, "Open the door, dear children, your mother is here, and has brought something back with her for each of you." But the wolf had laid his black paws against the window, and the children saw them and cried, "We will not open the door. Our mother has not black feet like you. You are the wolf." Then the wolf ran to a baker and said, "I have hurt my feet. Rub some dough over them for me." And when the baker had rubbed his feet over, he ran to the miller and said, "Stew some white meal over my feet for me." The miller thought to himself, "The wolf wants to deceive someone," and refused. But the wolf said, "If you will not do it, I will devour you." Then the miller was afraid and made his paws white for him. Now the wretch went for a 3rd time to the house door, knocked at it, and said, "Open the door for me, children. Your dear mother has come home, and she has brought every one of you something back from the forest with her." The lads cried, "First show us your paws, that we may know if you are our dear mother." Then he put his paws in through the window. When the kids saw that they were white, they believed that all said was true, and opened the door. But who should come in but the wolf? They were terrified and wanted to hide themselves. One sprang under the table, the 2nd into bed, the 3rd into the stove, the 4th into the kitchen, the 5th into the cupboard, the 6th under the washing bowl, and the 7th into the clock case. But the wolf found them all, and used no great ceremony. One after the other he swallowed them down his throat. The youngest in the clock case was the only one he did not find. When the wolf had satisfied his appetite, he took himself off, laid himself down under a tree in the green meadow outside, and began to sleep. Soon afterwards the old goat came home again from the forest. Ah, what a sight she saw there! The house door stood wide open, the table, chairs, and benches were thrown down, the washing bowl lay broken to pieces, and the quilts and pillows were pulled off the bed. She sought her children, but they were nowhere to be found. She called them one after another by name, but no one answered. At last, when she came to the youngest, a soft voice cried, "Dear mother, I am in the clock case." She took the kid out, and it told her that the wolf had come and eaten all the others. Then you may imagine how she wept over her poor children. At length, in her grief, she went out, and the youngest kid ran with her. When they came to the meadow, there lay the wolf by the tree and snored so loud that the branches shook. She looked at him on every side and saw that something was moving and struggling in his gorged body. "Ah, heavens," said she, "is it possible that my poor children, whom he has swallowed down from his supper, can still be alive?" Then the kid had to run home and fetch scissors, and a needle and thread, and the goat cut open the monster's stomach, and hardly had she made one cut, than one little kid thrust his head out. And when she had cut farther, all 6 sprang out one after another, and they were all still alive, and had suffered no injury whatever, for in his greediness the monster had swallowed them down whole. What rejoicing there was! Then they embraced their dear mother, and jumped like a tailor at his wedding. The mother, however, asked, "Now go, and look for some big stones, and we will fill the wicked beast's stomach with them while he is still asleep." Then the 7 kids dragged the stones thither with all speed, and put as many of them into his stomach as they could get in. And the mother sewed him up again, and in his greatest haste said he was not aware of anything and had never once stirred. When the wolf at length had had his sleep out, he got on his legs, and as the stones in his stomach made him very thirsty, he wanted to go to a well to drink. But when he began to walk and to move about, the stones in his stomach knocked against each other and rattled. Then cried he, "What rumbles and tumbles against my poor bones? I thought 'twas sticks kids, but it's naught but big stones." And when he got to the well and stooped over the water and he was just about to drink, the heavy stones made him fall in, and there was no help, but he had to drown miserably. When the 7 kids saw that, they came running to the spot and cried aloud, "The wolf is dead, the wolf is dead," and danced for joy around the well with their mother. The Wolf and the Fox. A wolf and a fox once lived together. The fox, who was the weaker of the two, had to do all the hard work, which made him anxious to leave his companion. One day, passing through a wood, the wolf said, "Red Fox, get me something to eat, or I shall eat you." The fox answered, "I know a place where there are a couple of nice young lambs. If you like, we will go and fetch one." This pleased the wolf, so they went. The fox stole one, brought it to the wolf, and then ran away, leaving his comrade to devour it. This is done. The wolf was not content, but wishing for the other, went himself to fetch it. And being very awkward, the old sheep saw him, and began to cry and bleat so horribly that the farmer's people came running to see what was the matter. Of course they found the wolf there, and beat him so unmercifully that, howling and limping, he returned to the fox. "You had already shown me how, so I went to fetch the other lamb," said he. "But the farmer's people discovered me, and have nearly killed me." "Why are you such a glutton?" replied the fox. The next day they went again into the fields. "Red Fox," said the wolf, "get me something quickly to eat, or I shall eat you." "Well," replied the fox, "I know a farm where the women are baking pancakes this evening. Let us go and fetch some." They went accordingly, and the fox, slipping around the house, peeped and sniffed so long that he found out at last where the dish stood. Then, quietly abstracting 6 pancakes, he carried them to the wolf. "Here is something for you to eat," said he, and then went away. The wolf had swallowed the 6 pancakes in a very short space of time, and said, "I should very much like some more." But going to help himself, he pulled the dish down from the shelf. It broke into 1,000 pieces, and the noise, in addition, brought out the farmer's wife to discover what was the matter. Upon seeing the wolf, she raised such an alarm that all the people came with sticks or any weapon they could snatch. The consequence was that the wolf barely escaped with his life. He was beaten so severely that he could scarcely hobble to the wood where the fox was. "Pretty mischief you have led me into," said the wolf, when he saw him. "The peasants have got, and nearly flayed me." "Why then are you such a glutton?" replied the fox. Upon a third occasion, being out together, and the wolf only able with difficulty to limp about, he nevertheless said again, "Red Fox, give me something to eat, or I shall eat you." "Well," said the fox, "I know a man who has been butchering, and has all the meat salted down in a tub of his cellar. We will go and fetch it." "That will do," said the wolf, "but I must go with you, and you can help me get off if anything should happen." The fox then showed him all the byways, and at last they came to the cellar, where they found meat in abundance, which the wolf instantly greedily attacked, saying at the same time to himself, "Here there is no occasion to hurry." The fox also showed no hesitation. Only while eating, he looked sharply about him and ran occasionally to the hole by which they had entered in order to try to see if it was still small enough to get out by the same way he had come in. "Friend Fox," said the wolf, "pray tell me why you are so fidgety, and why you run about in such an odd manner." "I am looking out, lest anyone should come," replied the cunning creature. "Come, are you not eating too much?" "I am not going away," said the wolf, "until the tub is empty. That would be foolish." In the meantime, the farmer, who had heard the fox running about, came into the cellar to see what was stirring, and upon the first sight of him, the fox, with one leap, was through the hole and on his way to the wood. But when the wolf attempted to follow, he had so increased his size by his greediness that he could not succeed, and stuck in the hole, which enabled the farmer to kill him with his cudgel. The fox, however, reached the wood in safety, and rejoiced to be freed from the old glutton. The Wolf and the Man. You got a lot of wolf stories over here. That's kind of neat. A fox was one day talking to a wolf about the strength of man. No animals, he said, could withstand man, and they were obliged to use cunning to hold their own against him. The wolf answered, "If I ever happen to see a man, I should attack him all the same." "Well, I can help you with that," said the fox. "Come to me tomorrow, and I will show you one." The wolf was already astir, and the fox took him out to a road in the forest, traversed daily by a huntsman. First came an old discharged soldier. "Is that a man?" asked the wolf. "No," answered the fox. "He has been a man." After that a little boy appeared on his way to school. "Is that a man?" "No, he is going to be a man." At last the huntsman made his appearance, his gun on his back, and his hunting knife at his side. The fox said to the wolf, "Look, there comes a man. You may attack him, but I will make off to my hole." The wolf set on the man, who said to himself when he saw him, "What a pity my gun isn't loaded with ball," and fired a charge of shot into the wolf's face. The wolf made a wry face, and he was not able to be so easily frightened, and attacked him again. Then the huntsman gave him the second charge. The wolf swallowed the pain and rushed at the huntsman, but the man drew his bright hunting knife and hit out right and left with it, so that, streaming with blood, the wolf ran back to the fox. "Well, brother," said the fox, "and how did you get on with the man?" "Alas," said the wolf, "I never thought the strength of man would be what it is. First he took a stick from his shoulder and blew into it, and something flew into my face, which tickled frightfully. Then he blew into it again and flew into my eyes and nose like lightning and hail. Then he drew a shining rib out of his body, and struck at me with it till I was more dead than alive. Now you see," said the fox, "what a braggart you are. You throw your hatchet so far that you can't get it back up again." Gossip Wolf and the Fox. The she-wolf brought forth a young one, and invited the fox to be godfather. "After all, he is a near relative of ours," she said, "and he has a good understanding and much talent. He can instruct my little son and help him forward in this world." The fox, too, appeared quite honest, and said, "Worthy Mrs. Gossip, I thank you for honor with which you are doing me. I will, however, conduct myself in such a way that you should be repaid for it." He enjoyed himself at the feast, and made merry. Afterward he said, "Dear Mrs. Gossip, it is our duty to take care of the child. It must have good food that it may be strong. I know a sheepfold from which we might fetch a nice morsel." The wolf was pleased, and she went out from the fox to the farmyard. He pointed out the fold from afar, and said, "You will be able to creep in there without being seen, and in the meantime I will look about the other side to see if I can pick up a chicken." He said, however, did not go there, but sat down at the entrance to the forest, stretched his legs, and rested. The she-wolf crept into the stable. A dog was lying there, and it made such a noise that the peasants came running out, caught Gossip Wolf, and poured a strong burning mixture, which had been prepared for washing, over her skin. At last she escaped, and dragged herself outside. There lay the fox, who pretended to be full of complaints, and said, "Ah, dear Mistress Gossip, how ill I have fared. The peasants have fallen on me, and have broken every limb I have. If you do not want me to lie where I am and perish, you must carry me away." The she-wolf herself was only able to go away slowly, but she was in such concern about the fox that she took him on her back, and slowly carried him perfectly safe and sound to her home. Then the fox cried to her, "Farewell, dear Mistress Gossip. May the roasting you have had do you good," laughed heartily at her, and bounded off.
Alright, we'll go back to whispering for this last one here, because Little Red Riding Hood is one of the big-time fairy tales, so we'll just end on this one for now. Little Red Riding Hood. There was once a sweet little maid, much beloved by everybody, but most of all by her grandmother, who never knew how to make enough of her. Once she sent her a little Red Riding Hood of red velvet, and as it was very becoming to her, and she never wore anything else, People called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Riding Hood, here are some cakes and a flask of wine for you to take to grandmother. She is weak and ill, and they will do her good. Make haste and start before it grows hot, and walk properly and nicely, and don't run, or you might fall and break the flask of wine, and there would be none left for your grandmother. And when you go into her room, don't forget to say good morning instead of staring about you." "I will be sure to take care," said Little Red Riding Hood to her mother, and gave her hand upon it. Now the grandmother lived away in the wood, half an hour's walk from the village, and when Little Red Riding Hood had reached the wood, she met the wolf. But as she did not know what a bad sort of animal he was, she did not feel frightened. "Good day, Little Red Riding Hood," he said. "Thank you kindly, Wolf," answered she. "Where are you going so early, Little Red Riding Hood?" "To my grandmother's." "What are you carrying under your apron?" "Cakes and wine. We baked yesterday, and my grandmother is very weak and ill, so they will do her good and strengthen her." "Where does your grandmother live, Little Red Riding Hood?" "A quarter of an hour's walk from here. Her house stands beneath the tree oaks, and you may know it by the hazel bushes," said Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf thought to himself, "That tender young thing would be a delicious morsel, and would taste better than the old one. I must manage somehow to get both of them." Then he walked by Little Red Riding Hood a little while, and said, "Little Red Riding Hood, just look at the pretty flowers that are growing all around you, and I don't think you are listening to the song of the birds. You are posting along just as if you were going to school, and it is so delightful out here in the wood." Little Red Riding Hood glanced around her, and when she saw the sunbeams darting here and there through the trees, and lovely flowers everywhere, she thought to herself, "If I were to take a fresh nosegay to my grandmother, she would be very pleased, and it is so early in the day that I shall reach her in plenty of time." And so she ran about in the wood looking for flowers, and as she picked one, she saw still a prettier one a little farther off, and so she went farther and farther into the wood. But the wolf went straight to the grandmother's house and knocked at the door. "Who is there?" cried the grandmother. "Little Red Riding Hood," he answered, "and I have brought you some cake and wine. Please open the door." "Lift the latch," cried the grandmother. "I am too feeble to get up." So the wolf lifted the latch, and the door flew open, and he fell on the grandmother and ate her up without saying one word. Then he drew on her clothes, put on her cap, lay down in her bed, and drew the curtains. Little Red Riding Hood was all this time running around among the flowers, and when she had gathered up as many as she could hold, she remembered her grandmother and set off to go to her. She was surprised to find the door standing open, and when she came inside she felt very strange and thought to herself, "Oh dear, how uncomfortable I feel, and I was so glad this morning to go to my grandmother." And when she said good morning, there was no answer. Then she went up to bed and drew back the curtains. There lay the grandmother with her cap pulled over her eyes so that she looked very odd. "Oh, grandmother, what large ears you have, the better to hear you with. Oh, grandmother, what large eyes you have, the better to see you with. Oh, grandmother, what large hands you have, the better to take hold of you with. But grandmother, what a terrible large mouth you have, the better to devour you." And no sooner had the wolf said it than he made one bound from the bed and swallowed up poor Little Red Riding Hood. Then the wolf, having satisfied his hunger, lay down again in the bed, went to sleep, and began to snore loudly. The huntsman heard him as he was passing by the house and thought, "How the old woman snores, I had better see if there is anything the matter with her." Then he went into the room and walked up to bed and saw the wolf lying there. "At last I find you, you old sinner," said he. "I have been looking for you a long time." And he made up his mind that the wolf had swallowed the grandmother whole, and that she might yet be saved. So he did not fire, but took a pair of shears and began to slit up the wolf's body. When he made a few snips, Little Red Riding Hood appeared, and after a few more snips, she jumped out and cried, "Oh dear, how frightened I have been. It is so dark inside the wolf." And then out came the old grandmother, still living and breathing. But Little Red Riding Hood went and quickly fetched some large stones, with which she filled the wolf's body, so that when he had waked up and he was going to rush away, the stones were so heavy that he sank down and fell dead. They were all three very pleased. The huntsman took off the wolf's skin and carried it home. The grandmother ate the cakes and drank the wine and held up her head again, and Little Red Riding Hood said to herself that she would never more stray about in the wood alone, but would mind what her mother told her. It must also be related how a few days afterward, when Little Red Riding Hood was again taking cakes to her grandmother, another wolf spoke to her, and wanted to tempt her to leave the path, but she was on her guard and went straight on her way, and told her grandmother how that the wolf had met her, and wished her good day, but had looked so wicked about the eyes that she thought it had not been on the high road, he would have devoured her. Come, said the grandmother, we will shut the doors so that he may not get in. Soon after came the wolf knocking at the door and calling out, Open the door, grandmother, I am Little Red Riding Hood, bringing you cakes. But they remained still and did not open the door. After that the wolf slunk by the house, and got at last upon the roof to wait upon until Little Red Riding Hood should return home in the evening. Then he meant to spring down upon her and devour her in the darkness. But the grandmother discovered the plot. Now there stood before the house a great stone trough, and the grandmother said to the child, Little Red Riding Hood, I was boiling sausages yesterday, so take the bucket and carry away the water they were boiled in, and pour it into the trough. And Little Red Riding Hood did so until the great trough was quite full. When the smell of the sausages reached the nose of the wolf, he snuffed it up, and looked around and stretched out his neck so far that he lost balance and began to slip. And he slipped down off the roof straight into the great trough and was drowned. Then Little Red Riding Hood went cheerfully home and came to no harm. All right, I think that will be it today for our fairy tale reading here in the dungeon. I really need to learn how to, I don't know, get a bigger voice. Is that what it's supposed to be? Or a voice with more endurance? I don't know how these other ASM artists are able to speak for like an hour at a time and take no breaths or no breaks, or maybe they're just editing the entire thing together. I find myself yawning a lot from talking like this, or needing to drink water or clear my throat. But oh well, maybe one day we'll find an answer. Until then, my name is Emprise, and you have been listening to Emprise Can Read. Dog City never sleeps. I hope that you may sleep.